I've learned that perfectionism really is a spectrum. The root of it is the same, though, regardless of where you're on the spectrum. It's an all or nothing pendulum swing. And the root is fear. It's also coping mechanisms, especially for those who have been through trauma. But for typical people who maybe don't have the trauma background, it's all about basing your identity, your sense of self off of your outcomes, whether you have them or you don't, whether you hustle, grind until you burn out, or you stay safe in the nothing, which also means you stay stuck.
Welcome to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jenn Trepeck, talking wellness and weight loss for real life. We're here to clear up the myths, misinformation, bad science, and marketing to teach you how to eat and how to cheat. Are you ready? I'm having salad with a side of fries. Hey friend, welcome back to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm Jenn Trepeck, your host and health coach, here with you every week for Wellness Without the Weirdness. In one of our episodes earlier this month, I shared that I feel like the word habits has become kind of trite. Like, we say this word, it doesn't really hold much meaning anymore. And then in another episode earlier this month, when we discussed how to maintain our health while traveling and on the road, we talked about our non-negotiables and also how our non-negotiables don't always look the same. So in these conversations, I also know that some of you heard rules rather than habits. Today, we're going to dig deeper into that and explore this idea of rigid versus flexible habits. And I have a truly wonderful guest to help us. So let me introduce you. She's a recovering perfectionist who uncovered the truest model to lasting growth. It's progress made practical. Sound familiar? So, as a writer, podcaster, and coach, she guides women to find sustainable growth by adopting progress over perfection. Her popular podcast, About Progress, is a top-rated show with millions of downloads. She's served thousands of women online as a certified habits and identity coach. She's a mom of 5, former middle school teacher, sourdough obsessor, and a beginning gardener. Please help me welcome Monica Packer.
Well, thank you. What a great intro.
Well, thank you. Welcome officially to Salad with a Side of Fries.
It's so good. I love everything about what you teach in your community too.
Well, likewise. So detour to Plug City for a second. Monica's podcast, About Progress, episode 695, features yours truly.
And so good. When you talk about the practical, we got it done that day.
Yeah, we did. So you called it Fat or Fact, the truth behind protein and fiber, essential nutrients for women's health, which we all know. And true to form, it's not an eat this, not that kind of thing, right? We talked a lot about why we might want to prioritize these foods, but then also how all of the other things came to be that we've learned that we're, kind of attempting to unlearn or relearn.
Yes. People definitely need to listen to that. It'll probably be a refresher for your community. Yeah. Since you teach them so well and go into the facts.
But always good to hear.
Practical. Yeah. Thank you. That was so great to have you.
Yeah. So friends, when you finish listening, pop over to About Progress. We'll put the link in the episode notes for everybody too.
Thanks.
Monica, thank you again for having me. I'm thrilled that you're here. And we'll start with your story and then kind of unpack habits from there. Really quick though, one more bit of housekeeping. We have to tell our Happy Healthy Hub members what they're getting this week. So friends, did you hear the big announcement? Our membership is all new and very much improved. So it's now called the Happy Healthy Hub. You still get a recipe every week delivered to your inbox. I'll still be sending you curated articles and discounts. You're now getting interview episodes like this one in full video, including some behind the scenes content for everybody, a community with the ability to post and comment on other people's posts, plus 24/7 AMA or Ask Me Anything to target your specific questions or challenges. You can upvote other people's questions, see past Q&As, and so much more. All of this is yours, by the way, for just $12 a month. You can also pay the whole year at once. This new platform is so much more user-friendly and very accessible, and I'm so excited for it. So for this week, your recipe is for Mediterranean wraps. The recipe uses salmon. You could also use chicken or even tofu, whatever you prefer. Frankly, what I love the most about it is Not just that it's a wrap, which is a great way to change it up, but also it's so easy. You could honestly make it mostly with leftovers, like whatever you have in your fridge. So when you see the ingredients, you'll get it. So if you want this recipe, if you want this episode in full video, plus access to our community chat and the 24/7 Ask Me Anything, go to asaladwithasideofries.com/membership. From there, you'll click subscribe now and then follow the prompts to enter your payment info, create your login to access the hub and all your benefits. Remember, you're going to asaladwithasideofries.com/membership. Now, even more than ever, it's a no-brainer way to show yourself that your health is a priority. At the same time, you're supporting this podcast and this community so we can continue to bring you new episodes and experts every week. On top of this week's episode in full video with the behind-the-scenes pieces and your 24/7 Ask Me Anything, you'll get this week's recipe for the Mediterranean wraps. Okay, Monica, spotlight on you. So we heard in your bio that you're a recovering perfectionist, as am I. I like to say many of us. I think we're in good company, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So curious, like, how did this show up in your life?
We have to go actually back like 20 plus years for me to begin, but I will do a nutshell version. Don't worry. For those listening, for me, it began by knowing I was a perfectionist. It was something that I aspired to be. I thought it was a good thing. I was trying to be a good fill in the blank, a good student turned teacher, wife, mom, anything I could basically fill in the blank with a role that I had. And I definitely thought that type A was best. And that's the way I needed it to be in order to do good things in the world. So it started out with good intentions, but throughout my entire youth and then up until I turned 20, I was in that boat of not only did I know I was a perfectionist, I wanted to be one. And I crashed and burned at 20. That's when I got diagnosed with multiple eating disorders and I had some severe mental health problems that were related to that, of course. And that's when I started many years of recovery. And it took a very, very long time. And I'm happy to talk more about that too, if that's helpful. But in the process, I went from all to nothing. And it was in large part because I was trying to, one, prioritize my healing. So good intentions. But those good intentions, again, got taken too far to the nothing side. I thought the only way to improve was that model, all. And because I had paid such a heavy price for all after so many years of being that person, I thought the only other alternative was nothing. And that was mostly about myself. For any of my responsibilities, especially the ones that were tied to other people, I could show up and I could do what I needed to do. I could be responsible and get those things done. But for myself, I kept everything on the sidelines, everything on the back burner. And then when I approached my 30th birthday, I similarly had another crash and burn. And it was not with eating disorders this time, thankfully. My recovery was doing a lot better at that point. But the mental health side was the exact same, like severe depression and panic and anxiety and all those things. And I got myself back to a great therapist. And this was a new one to me who likes to tell it like it is. And she pointed out that I was a perfectionist. And that was like brakes screeching, what? No, I'm not. Like,
Right.
I don't do anything. I do nothing. But from her, and then, of course, many years of learning since then, it's now been almost another 10 years. I've learned that perfectionism really is a spectrum. The root of it is the same, though, regardless of where you're on the spectrum. It's an all or nothing pendulum swing. And the root is fear. It's also coping mechanisms, especially for those who have been through trauma. But for typical people who maybe don't have the trauma background, it's all about basing your identity, your sense of self off of your outcomes, whether you have them or you don't, whether you hustle, grind until you burn out, or you stay safe in the nothing, which also means you stay stuck. So identifying that for me was life-changing because it forced me to try to find a new way. And that way for me involved a lot of courage to lean into doing things differently than we're typically taught with anything to do with personal development. I would say health is likely, paired with
1000%.
that. Yeah, really paired with that. And so that's where it became a 10-year experiment that has radically changed my life without my life actually changing much on the outside. My life looks pretty much the same as it did 10 years ago. Like, it's not like I suddenly got a new family or that I got like all these house cleaners or won the lottery. Like nothing about the circumstances changed in a dramatic way, but I changed. And it was less that I changed, and it was more that I became myself again and having that courage to find a new way, which is progress outside of perfectionism. So that's the nutshell version. That's why I'm here.
Yeah, so there's so many nuggets in there. I love what you said about how the circumstances and the outside perspective look exactly the same, right? What shifted was you and how you operate in that sort of umbrella, right? That makes all the difference. And I think sometimes so often we like, well, if only, right? If only this were different, if only that were different. And the truth is, maybe hard pill to swallow. It's us, not all of these other things.
And this is one of those tricky things because for a while there was a lot of like life coaching about how circumstances are neutral. And I actually have a big resistance to that.
Say more, say more.
It's one of those things. I don't believe circumstances are neutral. I don't. And I don't see that in my clients. I think there's a way to validate the hard while also owning that, there's this line about something that is you're not responsible for. You also, like maybe you weren't responsible for creating, but you're not responsible for how you're going to move through it. It's that same kind of thing. I think there's a way to validate, hey, I am experiencing a massive depression, or I have a special needs child, or we've lost a job in our dual income household or solo. Like there's a way to validate those things without becoming victim to them, while also being able to move through them differently. So I know I'm going down a whole other thing.
No, but I'm 1,000% with you. And I think it's valid and important because our conversation today, or any conversation we want to have with ourselves, if we're forcing, almost ignoring pieces that feel very real, anything we talk about is going to be superficial, right? Yeah. Because we can't get past, we can't even hear what's happening because we're stuck on this piece that we're ignoring.
Well, and I know you're so good at this, and this is what you do, especially when you get collect more information with the people that you're working with. Anyone who has hypothyroid disease that you're like what you're working through, it's going to have to look different for them. Like that's not a neutral circumstance, but it also is something that they don't have to have it be totally removed from their lives in order to improve their lives or to feel like they're functioning better within it. It's that kind of same line, I think, for me. But it will be relevant to what we're talking about with habits, because essentially what we're talking about today is, that it's not really neutral what we're experiencing most often as women and what's interfering with our habits.
Yeah. Okay. So on this topic of habits and this thing of rigid versus flexible and connecting your story, what I heard is that the tendency even to go from the perfectionism of perfect habits, everything is at 100%, to everything is at 0%, is just as perfect on the zero. Right? Yeah. So I guess maybe stepping back before we dig deeper, I think sometimes the word habits elicits an eye roll.
Yeah.
Right? So like, here we go again, right? This conversation about habits. So how do you define habits? And how do we want to think about them so that we can actually take in what we're talking about today?
Let me just start by saying I did not think I was a habit person. So even, 5 years ago when I was starting to get into habit formation, I didn't think that I would become the person to like go on other podcasts and talk about habits. So anyone who's listening and they're like, toxic positivity habits, or like all certainty, or bro marketing habits, like today's your day and get up and you're the only one responsible for your life. Like, I don't want to hear it again.
Same.
I want to hear it. I get it. And that's in large part because of how habits have been defined for us and in ways that are so inhuman, really unrealistic, not matching reality, that we have always been set up to fail, especially as women, which we will talk about. And so the way I actually teach habits is with that unlearning piece that you brought up earlier. We have to unlearn. And what we have to unlearn is what even habits are. When I typically ask the people I'm working with, like, so how would you define a habit? I mean, I get a lot of answers, but they're almost all about prescriptions, metrics I need to hit, standards I must complete, perfect consistency, doing the same things in the exact same way, at the exact same time, every single day, day after day. And Instead, what we need to shift and unlearn really is that habits are supportive. Habits are the way that we find support so that we can show up as ourselves. That is the purpose of habits. That's it. That really is it. And with that single redefinition, we kind of go topsy turvy and we're allowed to do habits differently, which we actually must do in order to do them with our circumstances, with the realities that we have in front of us, with days where we start our period or baseball season for those who have kids who do baseball. There's going to be multiple factors that influence the way we do habits. And so when we can redefine it, we have both the freedom and the path to have good and supportive habits that help us show up as ourselves, no matter what, without that magic wand that you also brought up earlier.
Yeah, so I'm totally with you. I'm on board with this definition of things that support us to show up as ourselves. And yet I hear somebody going, yeah. I know what to do. I just don't do it. And what I need to do is just do it. Right?
So this is an important thing because I think so much of how we define habits is about shoulds, right? So even in defining habits, it's loaded with shoulds. Shoulds can be chosen, though. There are certain things that we know would make our lives better. For me, that's meal planning. I hate meal planning. I hate day planning, but I do them. And I do them because of how they make my life better. But because I know those habits are just there to support me, that means I can choose these shoulds in ways that work for me. So I don't meal plan 3 meals and snacks every single day at a time. I just do dinners. And I actually do mine 2 weeks at a time. When I day plan, I do a big brain dump. And then I don't time block down to the hour. I just know from my brain dump, I pull 3 things I need to make sure I do that day. So again, this is like kind of a bit of an unlearning. You're like, but I do know I need to work on my sleep, but I do know I need to work on my nutrition, or, but I do need to actually go for a walk or something every day. Yes. But if you redefine what habits are, how does that free you up to choose a should in a way that is right and reflective of you and your season?
I'm hanging on your every word. And I want to go back to what you said about how we fail at habits because of what we've been taught.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can hear what you're saying about choosing our shoulds.
Yeah.
And thinking about how to make it work for us. I'm also curious for us to talk a little bit and point out what we've learned about habits that isn't serving us, that maybe led to the burnout that you experienced, so that everybody kind of sees both sides of the coin.
For sure. And this is like where it's so great because as you're learning new ways of doing things, the thing I always like to encourage is you want to make your own prescriptions. So if there are habits that are working well for you and ways you're doing those habits, great. Keep going, keep doing. But if certain things aren't, maybe you can analyze it from this perspective and see, well, okay, maybe if I do it this way, that would help me with that. In terms of thinking about how the habit formation methods we've learned from have failed us, not the other way around, the best way I have to illustrate that is by talking about consistency. And I do that best by asking a simple question. And it's, how long does it take to form a habit? So what would you say? What's the number that comes right to your head? Because there's always a number.
Right. Well, I think we've learned over the years, right? The old adage is 21 days.
Mm-hmm.
I also learned since the pandemic, it's up to like 60 something days for the average person.
The funny thing is, no matter what, there's a number. Everybody has at least one number in their head. And mostly it's usually 21, 28, 30. Sometimes it's a lot more days. But everyone, what we're centering in is everybody has a number. The thing is, that number is built off of consistency. So doing the ideal version of the habit, let's say I'm going to start on Monday. I'm going to do my 21-day challenge. So that means Monday, Tuesday, to 21 days. I'm going to do this exact habit at this exact same time every single day. And how many of us have participated in a challenge and gotten to like 18 days and something happens, or we can't do the full thing and we think we failed? And like the whole challenge is like thrown out the window. Or how many of us have gotten to that 21, 28, 30, 60 days? And it's great. We have the habit, but we also have like failed relationships or burnout on the side, or we are not ourselves. Like we are grumpy in other ways. So there are certain things that do demand that of us. Like we just jump right into it. But what I like to do is redefine what consistency is. And consistency is not rigid perfection. Consistency is doing your best most of the time, over time. That creates space for flexibility. And people think that flexibility and consistency are competing ideals, but they're not. They're complementary. Flexibility is what makes consistency possible. And I'll teach you more about how you can do that with habits specifically. But one other thing I want to highlight about this is it's the target for consistency is actually more times than not. If you are hitting the habit that you want more times than not, then you have the habit. If it's a daily habit and you hit it 4 days out of 7, even in the beginning or later or during a certain season, you have that habit. That's how we have to look at it. And also the best part, your best is allowed to change. And that can happen a lot seasonally. That day planning habit, for example, for me, I have a very pared down version of that I can do on a day where I just do not have the time or the bandwidth, the energy, or something came up where I don't even have to do the brain dump and sketch out what I'm doing for the week and who needs to be where. All I do is just write down the top 3 priorities for the entire week, just 3. That's it. Same thing with meal planning. I just jot down some ideas for the week and that's it on a Post-it note. So that flexibility is what actually makes consistency possible because it doesn't have to be rigid perfection in order to show up. And the best thing about that is that the more consistent you are, because of the flexibility, the more supported you are, but also the more you actually can do on your worst of day that grows too.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So I often talk about this as like, consistency and intensity are inversely related. Right. And that intensity is the perfectionism. That intensity is, and as you were talking about, 21 days, 30 days, whatever, what popped to my mind is everybody who says maybe they make it 2 or 3 days and it's them starting over on Monday. I hear all the time the starting over. And I think we have a nutrition nugget that says stop starting over. Like just keep going. But so I want to go down this road of flexible habits.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I think maybe those 2 words together for some people are a little bit of an oxymoron. So I want to get into some examples and all of that really quick. Let's highlight our partner for this episode. Big thanks to Snap Cleaning Products for supporting Salad with a Side of Fries. Make household and industrial cleaning a snap with their eco-friendly, economical, multi-purpose Snap products. Snap's concentrated multi-purpose formulas perform light to industrial strength jobs all in one bottle. Snap products give you the cleaning power of a variety of cleaners, saving you time, money, and valuable storage space. And Snap products were developed with the environment in mind, using plant-based ingredients that are biodegradable, phosphate-free, non-toxic, and bottled in recyclable containers. So today, as we talk about rigid and flexible habits, Snap fits that for me. So I will say I'm flexible about when and who cleans my apartment. You may see my housekeeper in the background, bless her. But I am rigid about using Snap. So the products are safe and powerful. They're made of enzymes, so they actually break down organic stains and material to remove them. The triple enzyme laundry detergent is just $13.95 for 40 ounces, does up to 80 loads of laundry, and it's truly free of chemicals and additives. The dish soap is $11.95 for 32 ounces. Maybe you're ready to upgrade your household cleaning products in one fell swoop. For that, they have the Snap Pack for just $89.95. And all these prices are before your discount. Because you're a Salad with a Side of Fries listener, you get 10% off and free shipping. So text the word CLEAN, CLEAN, to 844-947-4846. You'll receive the link and coupon code right to your phone. Again, text the word CLEAN, CLEAN, to 844-947-4846 to try Snap. In particular, I love the triple enzyme laundry detergent, or get the Snap Pack at 10% off plus free shipping. This is a toll-free number. Standard text and data rates may apply. Okay, so Monica, before the break, this idea of flexible habits is maybe like an oxymoron, right? So you also talked about this idea of the ideal is what we often think we're creating. What does it look like for something to be designed to be flexible?
Yeah. Well, let me just walk through what that looks like. So yeah, you're right. One of the ways we define consistency is we start with the ideal. Okay, the ideal version of what we want. So if we're going to take, let's take movement, for example. That's one of the most common habits people tend to want to work on. So let's say I just want to exercise 30 minutes a day. That's pretty doable. Walk for 20 minutes, do 10 minutes of Pilates. I'm trying to start more for someone who's like, that seems really realistic. Okay. That seems more doable than maybe what we typically see is out there in terms of what's movement, what counts as movement. But then if I ask them, hey, so how much of that do you do? And they're like, nothing. Okay. So even that realistic version is still an ideal version. And I'm glad it's her ideal. And that is important. You need to still have a vision in mind. Stephen Covey was right like that. Like, you do need to start with the end in mind. You need to know where you're headed, and you need to decide what that end is in a way that still matches you, how you like to move your body, what's realistic for the season of life that you are in, and maybe the health factors or time factors that are part of that season. So yes, start with the ideal in mind. You have to craft that vision of where you're headed with the habit. Now, I would say most of the time, because sometimes there are times, but most of the time we do not start with the ideal. We don't start with the ideal. I'm going to tell you a couple of reasons why in a bit, but let me tell you what you do start with. You start with the baseline. The baseline is like your non-negotiable. It's the smallest and simplest version of your ideal that you can do on your worst of day. So if we go back to that example, perhaps for this woman who currently isn't doing any kind of movement, she has that ideal in mind and it seems really great and crafted for her and it's what she wants. Maybe she knows on my worst of day, I could do a 10-minute walk. Okay. And this is going to be really subjective. For many people, the 30 minutes is their baseline. That 30-minute ideal that she just shared actually is someone else's. Like, I can do that on my literal deathbed. It doesn't matter. What matters is what's going to be right for you. So the baseline for many people, it's going to be like that, but I don't want that. I want the ideal.
Right.
There are those rare circumstances where you do need to start with the ideal. For me, that's always back to school season. Like, I can't gradually wake up my kids earlier and earlier and get them to school more and more on time. Like, no, we actually have to be up at a certain time and out the door and at school all by certain times. But with most cases, you can start with the baseline, the smallest and simplest version. Baselines give you the support you need, even in the smaller amount of time. Baselines create momentum. So most of the time, when you think it's a baseline day, you're actually able to do even a little bit more. And sometimes a lot more, because it's just the laws of physics. Like, a ball in motion stays in motion. Once you get momentum, you can do a little bit more. And nothing feels better than thinking that you're going to do a 10-minute walk and suddenly you've done 20. And you're like, am I the best athlete in the world? I think I am. So we talked about how they have power. They create momentum. Here's the biggest thing that I think is really important. Baselines build. Baselines build because of the other two factors I just shared. They build quicker and more sustainably towards the ideal. So you could be doing the ideal in a short amount of time. The reason I have most people start with the baseline is because we're trying to train your brain to believe you on a baseline day. So even if they have a little bit more energy that day, I tell most of my clients, even the first 2 times, I just want you to do the baseline so your brain believes you when it really is a baseline day. Because that way it's trained more to know it is okay. It's okay to do a different version of my ideal. But as your baselines build, you're going to get the ideal faster and more sustainably than if you start with the ideal and crash and burn. And your baselines build too. So what you can do on your worst of day grows as well. So my baseline, I shared about day planning. Just write down 3 things for the week I need to do. I rarely need that baseline. I very rarely need that minimum baseline. And that's because my baselines have built over time. So now I can usually do at least jot down my 3 things for the day. My baseline has grown. It's been that way with journaling and movement. After I had 5 kids, so I had my 5th one 2 years ago, and it rocked my world, like totally rocked my world. And you would think I would know what I was doing by that point, but I guess the joke was on me. I didn't. And my baseline for movement was 10 minutes of anything. Even if it was just touching my toes, that counted. And now 2.5 years later, my baseline is 30 minutes. And I didn't even intentionally work towards that, just gradually happened. So this is where people are going to feel a lot of resistance. And again, it's like, you have the ability, if things work for you, if you've been able to apply ideals with certain habits easy, then that worked. You're doing well. But if for certain habits, you're really stuck or you keep getting on and off the wagon, this is where I would consider doing it a different way because the current way you're doing isn't working for you. So you need to have the courage to do something different and see if it works better for you over time.
I love this idea that baselines build, and that just because this is where we're starting doesn't mean that that's the only place we'll ever be.
Yeah.
And then one of the things that's coming up in my mind as you're sharing this is also this idea of what versus how. And so, I could imagine somebody saying, okay, the what is the 10 minutes or 30 minutes of movement, going with that example. The how might be 2 minutes here, 2 minutes there. Today it's touching my toes. Tomorrow it's walking to the mailbox to get the mail or whatever. Does that resonate with you? How do you see that sort of fitting into this framework?
So to me, that's going back to your season and where you're starting. So as you're considering what habit I want and how I want it to look, you want to design it specifically with those things in mind. So like postpartum, of course, I'm going to keep that. I'm not going to do 10 minutes of high fitness, like jumping up and down or going for a run, which by the way, I did for like my first 3 kids and then my uterus almost fell out. So I wouldn't recommend that even for a shorter amount of time. So yeah, this all goes back to even as you're casting a vision of the ideal version, do that. The how part can be different. The way that you journal can change from winter to summer. Maybe in the wintertime, you just love getting nice and cozy and like writing long, luxurious entries to your journal because that just is so good for the season. And maybe it helps you get through a seasonal depression that you may experience when the times get a little darker. But during the summer, you love to be out and with people and like taking advantage of long walks in the park at night or spending time on a porch. And that's when journaling for the summertime can be a 1 line a day journal. And that's still an ideal for you. And that still works. So yeah, I think both factors are okay. It's just all has to go back to there's not one meets all prescription. That's one of the biggest pet peeves I have in this personal development world. What works for one person should not be applied as a prescription for everybody else. You get to make your own, even with the how, especially with the how.
Yes. And then where does motivation fit in? Because I often say motivation comes later, right? It follows momentum. But I could hear someone listening and saying, I'm just not motivated to start the habit.
Mm-hmm. That's where it goes back to the baselines. The baselines are, if it's not something you can do on a day where you have no motivation or you feel like no motivation in your body, then it's not a baseline yet. It needs to be smaller and simpler. And for the clients who continue to face that roadblock of I don't feel like it, that's where we have to get real about, do you actually want this habit? It sounds like you don't, and that's okay too. A lot of those shoulds are so entrenched in us that we just don't even realize how sneaky they are. Or sometimes we have to just prove ourselves wrong and show ourselves like, actually, I hate doing this habit, just like I do with the planning stuff, but I love the results so much. But because I've challenged myself to do it differently, I can see, oh, it's still worth pushing through this no motivation. And because the baseline's so small, it's not reliant on energy. That's a big, big factor with habit formation too. The old models are so dependent on having this like reserve of energy that's just like this tank that people wear all the time. And it has all the same amounts at all times. And that's not true. I mean, and there's a competing science on this, but regardless of what it looks like, willpower / motivation, which is all synonymous for energy, is different for each person. And there is a point in it. You can work to expand it. You can work to have more reserves over time. Like you can work to get better at it, but it still will tap out. So if you've had a really crappy day, you're going to have lower energy. So that's why our habits need to be flexible to match us on those low energy days. So we're not relying on motivation. We are working more to create momentum instead of being reliant on the motivation.
Awesome. Yes. And then I can also hear that perfectionist voice popping up over time. Mm-hmm. Right? I have to imagine that happened for you as well.
Yeah.
What do we do when we hear that voice of, I know this was the baseline, but?
Mm-hmm. So I think the but for a lot of people is even before they start, they think that's not good enough. I'm not even going to start there. And that's when we're going to borrow from Dr. Phil and say, how's that working for you? Like, is it working? Then great. You don't need this advice on that habit. But if it's not, I had this client years ago who we were working on these perfectionistic tendencies. And it wasn't even about her habits. It was about the all or nothing pendulum swing. And she had been pretty high achieving for many years. And she achieved great things, like amazing things. And she was now in a different place in her life. Her energy levels were different. Her circumstances had changed. And she was trying to find a new way to grow. And she was terrified. She was terrified of being messier, of potentially being mediocre. As she created these small wins instead of like big overarching, like overnight kind of wins, and doing things differently. It was just really scary for her. And we worked on it. We worked hard on it. And at the end of coaching, she said something to me that I've never forgotten. She said, I learned it takes the greatest of courage to do the smallest of things. I'm a person where things just go in and out. Like, I'm a great learner, but I'm not great at retaining. That has stuck with me for years because she was so right. It does take the greatest of courage. If you are someone who's on that pendulum swing of all or nothing, the thing about that pendulum swing is it never stops and the arcs get wider and wilder, and you are paying prices for being on that pendulum. You pay the price for all. You get a success, but what people don't see are the prices you're paying inside with your mental health or with relationships or other parts of your life. There are prices to pay for all, but you are also paying the prices for nothing. And I think everyone gets to a point where they have to decide, am I willing to take on some courage to do the smallest of things, to get messy, to fail potentially, to not go all or nothing, to believe in the power of the small and to try it differently. And if you're at that point, that's what I hope you can, take my hand and try it, because here is the weird magic of growing outside of perfectionism. You grow exponentially over time. When I was on the all or nothing pendulum swing, there are things I did grow in. I had a major success in certain things. Like, I was like on the high honor society in college. I almost got straight A's. I got a full ride scholarship without even trying. Like, I didn't know I was trying to get a scholarship is what I'm trying to say. Like, I just got the grades and like, oh, congratulations. Now we will cover your, I was like, well, okay. So those things happened, but I can honestly tell you the prices were not worth it. The costs were not worth it. And in changing the way that I pursue growth in any area of my life, to make room for the mess and failure, to believe in the small wins that I'm building, I have grown exponentially more. I'm not on any front pages of newspapers. I don't have a full ride scholarship anywhere, but I am a totally different, exponentially grown person than when I was on that pendulum swing.
First of all, as you're sharing the story, I have chills. I think that's a beautiful place to sort of put a pin in it and to say to everybody, like, this is what's possible. It's all possible.
And if we're putting a pin in it, I think that is, again, the best note. I will say this too. You can change. We get stuck on that pendulum because we are afraid. We're afraid of not changing. And everyone has the potential to change.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for giving me my soapbox
Yeah.
to stand on and shout from.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, it's time for our rapid fire off-topic questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Yep.
All right, now I feel silly with the way this first one is worded, and I always sort of feel I have to rephrase this one. So, what's the best thing you've done for your health this week? What's the naughtiest thing you've done related to your health this week? Really, because it's balance and all the things are part of our lives.
Sure. I love that. Oh gosh, I think best thing is I went to bed early. I guess naughtiest thing is I'm really trying to think about that. Yeah, maybe it's a rephrasing. I guess it's what you were going for, right? Like, I took a nap after I took my kids to the dentist today because I was like, I'm falling asleep on the freeway, like tapping my foot on the floor, trying to keep awake. So don't say that's naughty, but yeah, I get what you mean though.
Yeah.
I get
I mean, also a nap sounds amazing.
Yeah.
All right. If you weren't a writer, podcaster, and coach, what would you do?
Oh, easy. I was a teacher before all of this. So I would do teaching of some kind. I think I would go back to school and get my PhD and climb the academia ladder.
On that line, favorite book on any topic other than your area of expertise, or you could give us a fiction book.
Ooh, this is tough for me because I love to read. Oh gosh. I have to say, I think read Fair Play by Eve Rodsky. It is so good. It is so good. It will help you we didn't even get into the whole women issue with habits, but
Oh, yeah.
that's a big one right there. Fair Play is excellent. And if you want some fiction recs, just DM me and I'll give you a list.
Perfect. All right. I'm adding Fair Play to my list too.
Yeah.
If you could cure one ailment, disease, or sickness, what would it be?
Ooh, I just read Tuberculosis book by John Green. So I'm like, I should say tuberculosis. My first instinct, though, was depression. I think that's, the big one.
If you were a superhero, what would be your superpower?
Just being able to show up somewhere. Teleport.
Same. That's mine. What's your biggest pet peeve?
I think people who think they know everything and are really certain.
All right. Last one, in your opinion. What's the next frontier in wellness?
I think it's anything to do with women and not making all of the research and advice and expertise be as gender neutral as people think it is when it's really not.
1,000%. Well, Monica Packer, thank you so much for being here. Tell everybody how to connect with you, where to learn more about you, your work, listen to About Progress, all the things.
Yeah, the biggest thing, you're already listening to a podcast, so scoot over and search for About Progress and you'll find me. I'm also on Instagram at that same name, and my website is aboutprogress.com. I am halfway through writing a book on habit formation, so hopefully in 2026 that will be out, and hopefully I'll be able to share the title soon, but if they're following me, they'll learn.
Awesome. I love it. Well, as always, everybody, I'm your host, Jenn Trepeck. Connect with me on Instagram or all social media. I'm at Jenn Trepeck, JENNTREPECK. Website is asaladwithasideoffries.com. Pick your platform, send a message. Hearing from you is the highlight of my day. Your key takeaways, your ideas, your questions. This is also the easiest way to learn more about working with me. And Monica Packer, you're a gem. I so appreciate you for being here and spending time with us.
It was truly a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And friends, if you are not already a member, join us in the Happy Healthy Hub. You'll go to asaladwithasideoffries.com/membership. This shows your support for this podcast, this community, and of course, your health. On top of this week's episode in full video with behind the scenes pieces and your 24/7 Ask Me Anything, you'll get this week's recipe for the Mediterranean wraps. So until next week, remember, sometimes our desire to get it right and do it well shows up in how we build habits. Those are rigid habits. The trick is to focus on building flexible habits instead. Well, friends, that's it for today's episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. Congratulations for making yourself and your health a priority. Thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to click subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform. Share us with a friend, and we'll be back next week. Always remember, you deserve it, and you are worth it. Happy healthy.